Welcome to another episode of Mental Health Matters. My name is Tom Duff. I am the Executive Director of St. Louis Counseling and also a licensed clinical social worker, so I'm a therapist at heart. So remember, this podcast breaks down the stigma associated with mental health issues through conversations and just looking at mental health from different perspectives, because mental health affects us all in different ways. So we try not to only show our expertise in the area, but also bring on guests that also have a lot of significant expertise in the areas. But first, today, just remember, if you're listening, actually, when you hear this, Give STL Day will already be over. So hopefully you gave on Give STL Day and you reached out and did something, even if it's not with our nonprofit, but any nonprofit that you're supporting out there. But certainly, if you are looking to get involved with St. Louis Counseling, contact Debbie Dugan. That's DUGAN at CCSTL. And also, check us out on our website, and that is spelled out, stlouiscounseling.org. So today, with Mental Health Matters, we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition. And so, sometimes people are like, mental health matters, nutrition, what's the connection there? And, I'll kind of tee all this up with the discussion on, if physical exercise and healthy eating is part of what we're trying to do to improve our overall body, and the way we look even. And we're talking about all the things we put into our body, and, look at people that have, your stereotypical beer belly, or you're eating all these inflammatory foods. It has an effect on our body, right? So why would it not have an effect on our brain as well and our overall mental health? So today, I'm very excited to have Jenn McDaniel join us. Jenn, how are you?
I am well and very happy to be here to talk about the mind-gut-brain connection, nutrition, all things about health. Yes.
Excellent. So I actually first heard you, I think you were on a radio station in town here, AM 550, and I heard you talking, and I'm a surfer on the radio, so it just happened to come through and hear that you were on the Guy Phillips show, and I just heard you talking about this connection with mental health and even supporting therapy, and from your world of being a nutritionist. But so then I was like, well, I feel like a stalker, but I'm going to Google her and all that. So I reached out, and we were able to kind of get together and talk a little bit, because I think we share some common themes and how we approach different areas of this. But I guess tell us a little bit about you, your business, and let's start with that.
Yeah, so I'm the owner of McDaniel Nutrition Therapy. I started that business about 7 years ago, and I can remember that because my oldest son is 7.
Perfect.
So there's the connection. Yes,
Yeah.
I was teaching at St. Louis University and had a wonderful career path there, but when I started a family, I just really wanted to be able to have a little bit more flexibility, and I always wanted to go into private practice. So I opened up shop about 7 years ago, and we have a team of 3 dietitians right now. We specialize in weight management, sports nutrition, eating disorders, and then my actually love, where I enjoy practicing the most, is corporate wellness, really working in the business sector. And so we also have been doing some cutting edge things. We do genetic testing. That's a new service that we're offering. So it's a fun, no day looks the same, but we really love, we're very passionate about what we do.
So from a credential rise, right? So maybe let's educate our listeners on registered dietitian and nutrition, just some of those concepts.
I appreciate the opportunity to do that. Yeah. Yes. So a nutritionist can go online and do an hour course and call themselves a nutritionist. So there's really no standard definition for that term. A registered dietitian means that you have a 4-year bachelor's degree, you've done a 1-year dietetic internship, and then I think like 50% of registered dietitians also have their master's degree. So you can count on the fact that a registered dietitian has the education and has the credential with both the state and also usually is a member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, kind of our governing body. But at the same time, a registered dietitian sometimes calls themselves a nutritionist, which can be confusing. So the title behind my name is RDN, which stands for Registered Dietitian Nutritionist. So a registered dietitian can call themselves a nutritionist, but a nutritionist cannot necessarily call themselves a registered dietitian.
And see, I think that's really important because, so many people are out there trying to figure out, how to eat healthy, and you can get confused, if you don't understand everything that's going on and who you're turning to.
Totally. And that's not to say that there's not experts out there who are not registered dietitians who don't know what they're talking about, but I think that it's a credential that you can easily trust. You know that if I tell my clients to just Google whatever you're searching for. So if you're Googling intermittent fasting, Google intermittent fasting registered dietitian. And then usually you're going to hopefully get some really sound, credible information.
So when did you decide that you wanted to go down this field? Like what? Did you grow up saying this or what?
So I had a dad from Kentucky who ate a lot of biscuits and bacon. I have a northern mother who would drink like the water after she'd cook broccoli, two completely different parents.
Wow.
And I went luckily the route of my mom. So in high school, I loved to cook. I loved to play around with food. I like to try to see how many different combinations of food I could make and then make my little sister try all the combinations.
Wow. I'm sure there's some good recipes at the beginning. Yeah.
And I was also active. I was a gymnast. So, I valued the role of nutrition, and also I was really interested in preventative medicine. I also like science. So the combination of food and health and science really led my guidance counselor in high school to say, hey, there's this job out there called a registered dietitian. You should check it out.
Wow.
So I was one of those lucky people who went into their 4-year degree knowing exactly what they wanted to do, and then I stayed the course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Man, that's quite you had two paths to choose, Kentucky or Northern. Yeah.
And he still doesn't listen to my advice. I'm like, hey, Dad, there's this Mediterranean table cookbook I wrote. Maybe you should check it out,
Is there gravy on that book?
Yeah. Well, you know what? He did have he had a cardiac bypass surgery, quadruple. He had his widow's peak, what's the name? The widow's artery, I think is what it's called. It was 90% blocked. So he had quadruple bypass surgery at the age of 52.
Wow.
So we have a really strong history of heart disease, and that's one of the reasons why I was very interested in, having a healthy diet to protect my longevity. And not just longevity, but I love the new word called Healthspan. It's not about lifespan. It's about how long are you living a healthy life?
Yeah. And I think so that kind of leads into when we're looking at diets, right? So for myself, I'm always trying to lose 10 to 20 pounds. 10 pounds I could probably do pretty easy. Then that extra 10 is that takes a little bit more work, But then it's what works for you, And so often, my perspective is there's so many different diets out there, right? This one's the expert, do this way. This is the new research, do it this way. And so for somebody that's out there that's trying to figure out themselves, right, and figure out what works for them, what's some beginning parts of exploring how to eat healthy for your own individual self?
Yeah, that's a tough question. And I think that number one, you really want to examine what feels right for you, not just what sounds like it's going to work, but really what you can see yourself doing for the long haul. I always remind my clients it's not about the short-term game. We really, like you said, you want to lose that weight and be able to keep it off. You don't want to see it return. So it's really got to be looking at a way of eating that you can sustain. That's not to say that you might not try to jump start weight loss with maybe a little bit more of a drastic approach. But just keep in mind that if it's really drastic, it's likely, that you're not going to be able to sustain it. And if you haven't changed your lifestyle to support that new way of eating, then it's just going to likely come back. So it's really aligning your values with the way that you eat as well, and making sure that it's just not too restrictive, because I think that people have a really hard time following something like that for a long term.
Yeah, I think, what I've seen is, like you said, changing your lifestyle to fit that diet. So if you're still having a pantry full of all your favorites, like maybe Fruit Loops or Captain Crunch, just for example,
Okay.
Okay.
Lucky Charms would be my example.
Okay, if we're being honest, I might even throw some Fruity Pebbles in too. But yeah, I mean, if you keep those things around, right, it's just so much harder to ignore it when the cravings hit, right?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I do think that looking at our environment is important. But you also have to think about, how can I eat in the context of other people? Because if you aren't alone, like if I live by myself, it's much easier to follow through with what I'm doing. But I don't live by myself. I have 3 young boys who need to be able to explore and make their own decisions. And, we try to keep a house that's full of healthy things, but I also think it's important that they learn how to manage unhealthy things. So we've got that stuff in the house. We have Oreos right now in our house. Now, I don't like Oreos, so it's easy for me not to.
Yeah,
and maybe that's the trick. You buy the junk food that you don't like.
Yeah, they like, wait, are they double stuffed Oreos or regular?
They're just regular.
Oh,
My husband bought them. Thank you, PJ. So, but no, I think that you have to create an environment that makes it easier for you to, make the right choices. But at the same time, I think it's also about examining, are you an all or nothing person? Because some people, once they start, it's really hard to turn it off. So maybe that's just knowing yourself, knowing that you really can't have that stuff at easy access. Or if you're someone who is trying to lose weight, but you can moderate, well, then maybe you build that into your day. Like I build in 150 calories of dark chocolate into my day every day, and I enjoy it and I love it. And it's just part of something that I eat. So I think it's also about knowing your personality and how you approach life in general.
And then that proactive approach as well, almost scheduling, like you said, for you, the dark chocolate, right? And so giving yourself an allotted amount.
Right. Yeah, there's been some evidence around that, like people who have kind of a pattern of eating that they stick to, and they're fairly consistent with maybe the times that they eat or the types of meals that they eat when, they tend to do better when there's some structure around it. And I think another thing, I was just at a sports nutrition conference this past weekend, and we had the keynote speaker was named BJ Fogg, and he wrote a book called Tiny Habits. And his whole premise is that we can't use motivation, because motivation is always high in the beginning, right? But we can't sustain it. So instead of using motivation, it's all about getting like concrete, specific steps about what you need to do in order to make these habits last. So for instance, if, you were trying to eat a better breakfast, you might, on Saturday or Sunday, like write out exactly what you plan on eating. And that might just be all you do, right? So they're simple and specific. And when we build a life around simple and specific habits, we kind of get some momentum, we feel successful. And that's the other piece too. The second piece of it is that we celebrate those small successes. We feel that inner shine that comes out. And if we can do that more often, we're more likely to stick with something.
That is so important. I'm so glad you said that, because that's something we talk a lot about in counseling and therapy, is celebrating those small successes. Because a diet, if you're trying to improve a certain part of your life through counseling, you got to just recognize that, like, hey, I did it, and maybe it's one day of writing some positive things in your journal, whatever it may be you're working on, but it's so important to reward yourself and acknowledge that, just with even verbal praise.
Yeah, and I think that comes easier for some people than others. I was thinking about this morning, because I got up at 4:50 to run, right? I'm like, why do I do this? Why do I wake up this early? And I'm like, well, when I'm up and I'm out, it's dark and like it's just peaceful, and I can hear the birds singing, and like the whole run I'm really paying attention to all the good things that I'm feeling while I do it. So that's strongly imprinted. And exercise, I think, is naturally rewarding. Avoiding the Fruit Loop cereal in your closet isn't naturally rewarding. So sometimes we have to kind of generate that internally, that celebration. But it really does feel good when you're able to know that you made a decision that it just empowers you. And if you can sit with that feeling of empowerment more often, it's just better for us, I think. Yeah.
So you mentioned sports nutrition a little bit ago. So discuss that a little bit. How would that be different when you're approaching a client from that perspective? Is there a difference?
Yeah, I think with sports nutrition, I tend to pay a little bit more close attention to, say, macronutrients like carbohydrates, protein, and fat. If it's an endurance athlete, for instance, who's training for like a marathon, they need a certain amount of carbohydrate compared to someone who's just trying to improve overall health. So I look more closely at some of the, the types of foods they're eating. Are they eating enough? Are they eating at the right times, like around their training to support? One of the most common mistakes I would say I see with endurance athletes is they get up, they do their exercise, they have a little bit of breakfast. The majority of their nutrition comes later on in the evening, right? That's not the best time to be eating the majority of the food. They needed it around the earlier part of the day when their bodies were most active and receptive to those nutrients. So sports nutrition is just a little bit more tailored when it comes to like timing and then the right amounts of food to support the type of activity they're doing.
So if the everyday person says, you know what, I want to make a change, I want to go see somebody who's an expert, they come to you, they come into your office, like what would, for someone who's never been to your business or just, from a dietitian standpoint, what would they expect?
Right. So before they even meet with me, they get some paperwork to fill out, and that paperwork includes like a pretty large assessment of their habits, right? So it might be like, where do they grocery shop? How many times a week do they cook? Who is in their family? What's their medical history? I have them complete a 3-day food journal. So when they come in, I can look at their like daily patterns. So a lot of the beginning is probably what it might also look like in a therapist office. I'm listening. I want to hear, I want to learn. The more I can really learn about not just nutrition, but about their sleep habits, how they manage stress, because it just all goes together. And so I learn a lot, and then we kind of figure out, okay, what does the client want? What is the expectation that when they leave here, they want to know? And then making sure that those things are in line. And then I'll take a look, and I'll obviously discuss the diet and how we can make changes in their diet to better support, say, weight loss. But I try not to do too much in that first visit, because if we're going back to setting small, remarkable goals, the goal is not to be overwhelming and to allow them to feel successful in what that change is. So maybe when they leave, their goals are, I'm going to meal plan, I'm going to try to include a larger breakfast, because I know eating this larger breakfast helps me manage hunger the rest of the day, and maybe I'm not going to eat so late into the night. Right? That might be the 3 things that they manage, and then I usually give example meal plans to kind of support them along the way as well.
So which is, it's very similar to counseling. So how often would you see a client?
So that depends. I mean, I would imagine just like therapy, the more often you can interact with your therapist, your dietitian, the greater the chance of success. But then there's always a barrier of money, right? So we have to kind of balance out those 2 things. So, I've got programs like a 12-week program where I talk every single week with them virtually using like Zoom or something, a webinar type of online kind of conversation. And then there's other programs where people like to meet face to face. So they might come in every 2 weeks for a couple of months. And then we can begin to space those appointments out based upon how well they're doing. So it's really just dependent upon the client, how well they're proceeding, how well they feel like they're proceeding, and then, how much money they have to spend, they want to spend on it. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned a couple things, stress. You mentioned, I think I heard you say sleep as well. So when someone's coming into, as a clinician, I'm going to ask some things right off the bat. I'm going to ask about exercise, nutrition, and sleep. When someone's coming in saying, I have these things going on in my life, and a lot of times that helps us get that baseline too, kind of similar.
Right.
And when we talk about this mental health side to healthy eating, there's like two main components the way I think about it. So one, you have, why not, as I said earlier, think of your brain as part of your whole body when it comes to nutrition, because so often we're associating that if we're trying to lose weight, inches or the way we look, things of that nature, but then how it makes us feel is this other aspect, which is remarkable, and then this standpoint when it comes to if you're trying to change some unhealthy eating patterns, like the struggle it is and why diets fail, or why a different lifestyle fails sometimes. And I think that's where discouragement comes in, and how often, like I'll be talking and, sometimes I'll use that as an example about success. Like how many people have started a diet and, haven't done what you want, and everyone raises their hands, So it's like that component of like how to manage that, because it's stressful trying
Yeah.
to eat healthy
Oh my gosh.
on a lot of levels.
Totally. Yeah. Just send them back to you, really.
Yeah.
I mean, really true, though. I do think if someone's very serious about transformation, because really in the end, that's kind of what it is. You're transforming a lot of things in your life. When you see people have made like massive changes, they've gone from a couch potato to like running and like marathons, and now I've got a whole new circle of friends, and now they're eating all these greens that they never ate before. Like, that's a transformation. And I think sometimes people expect that that's just going to happen overnight, but there's so much mental work that needs to go into that. So I really think that if you're very serious about that, you do work with a therapist in conjunction with a registered dietitian, because to be fair, registered dietitians don't have that training like you therapists have.
Yeah.
So,
and we don't have the ability to say, this is what you should be eating,
right,
know? Yeah.
Right. But I think it kind of goes back a little bit to being able to, set those specific goals, getting, reminding yourself how good it feels when you make the right decisions, and trying to have that more positive mindset about the like transformation and the journey that you're going on, compared to always thinking about what you can't eat and I've got to like exercise. Like, I always, for instance, with exercise, if I'm trying to get someone to move more, I might say, think about how you're going to feel when the exercise is done. Don't think about what you have to do to get to the gym and like your energy levels now. Sit with how you're going to feel when you're finished. Because when you're finished, when have you ever said, man, I really wish I wouldn't have worked out, right? Not.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't. Or I wish I would have not had that salad. I feel terrible now compared to that double cheeseburger. So it's about kind of maybe thinking about it in a more positive mindset. And what are you going to enjoy about this journey? What are you looking forward to with it, versus just thinking about what you can't have?
Yeah, I think that's so, because, for myself, I can speak for myself, and I have a feeling there's a lot of people that can connect to that, but it's exactly what you said. It's like a lot of times it's that negative part, like I can't have that, or I can't have this, and this sucks,
Right.
But then when you can totally get behind that, remembering how it feels, and one, your body feels differently because you nourished it the right way at lunch, and then you realize like, hey, I'm not sluggish at 2 p.m. because I had some meatloaf at lunch, and I thought that was a good idea at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, people come to see me, they've usually followed a litany of different diets. And going on a diet is like one of the largest predictors of weight gain. Isn't that interesting? So some of it's like, should we just lose the word diet? Right? Should we just let go of the fact that you're going to be dieting? Should it just be more of a focus on, I'm going to start doing healthier things for myself? And what does that look like? What am I ready to start doing? So it's, it's not about going on something so you can go off something. It's about just eating in a different way that really supports not only maybe weight loss, but also a healthier heart and a healthier head.
And longevity of life as well too, right?
Yes.
Because everyone wants to live and enjoy all the different things in life. So, you mentioned earlier when we were talking, there's different types of diets, different ways of eating, right? See, I caught myself.
Yeah.
Diet is a negative term.
Like,
I think about that, and I hear that, it's like negative, not fun.
No. Restriction, deprivation.
Exactly, exactly. So my goal is not to say that the rest of the podcast.
Okay, good luck.
D word, we'll call that, yeah. But you wrote a cookbook, correct?
Yes, I helped write a cookbook. I can't take 100% of the claim to that, but I wrote a cookbook along with Prevention, the team of Prevention. And so, it's a Mediterranean table cookbook, and there's 100 recipes that are Mediterranean inspired. There's a great deal of information about the Mediterranean diet. When we look at all the different, I get to say diets, right?
Yeah, you can say,
When we look at all the different diets out there in the research, right? Because a lot of diets, for instance, keto, don't have a ton of research. Ketogenic diets got great research in epilepsy, but it doesn't have good long-term research necessarily in long-term weight loss. The Mediterranean diet really isn't a diet. It is a way of eating, and it's also about a way of living, the way that people do in the Mediterranean region. And so there's a lot of information about like the Mediterranean lifestyle, but the Mediterranean diet's been one of the most studied diets in terms of heart disease, blood pressure, Alzheimer's, diabetes, weight management. The U.S. News and World Report ranked the Mediterranean diet as the #1 diet to follow in 2019,
Wow.
as well as many other accolades for the Mediterranean diet, like the easiest diet to follow. So, so that book is dear to my heart for many reasons, but I think that it's the way of eating is really, we actually do a lot of it, I think, even here. It's plant-based, but yet it includes meat just in smaller amounts. It includes dairy in smaller amounts, and thankfully it includes red wine and chocolate in smaller amounts.
That's a not
right?
bad
So
combination.
it's not an exclusive way of eating, it's an inclusive way of eating, but it prioritizes fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, fish are kind of like the staples, and of course olive oil. Big one.
Well, of course.
Can't forget the olive oil.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought because I was thinking about eating.
Chocolate.
Yeah, the chocolate got me. Well, going back to that and the research behind that. So if you're out there and you're looking at all the different types of, okay, we know the term fake news has happened a lot over the last couple of years, right? That's been termed fake news.
Right.
So, there's a lot of stuff that's out there, and like I know when I've started reading more and more into different aspects of a healthy eating plan, that I realized like what is the research behind that? Now, is there like somewhere to go to that if you really are wanting to figure out, okay, I want to, I'm searching this different way of eating. I'm really watching if I can say.
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, not to say that. A healthy way of eating. Where should I look? Is there a certain type of resource that we would go to look?
Well, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is eatright.org, and they always do reviews of the various plans of eating out there. But you know what? When you look at there's been lots of research papers that combat like all these diets against each other, right? So you've got the Atkins versus the Mediterranean versus the American Heart Association, whatever, the litany of them are out there. In the end, what we typically see is at the end of a year, everybody has, they might have lost different amounts of weight, but they've all put on about the same amount of weight at the end. Wow. They all come out even, right? So it's more important that whatever diet you follow is one that you can stick to. That's what research says works, is what works for the individual. So when people come to me and say, what do you think about this diet? What do you think about this diet? I'm like, does it work for you? Okay, well, and unless it's like a completely unsafe way of eating, most of them aren't.
Like all Twinkies.
Right.
That you're not going to support that, right?
Right, right. I'm not going to, and I can't really get behind like the high saturated fat keto. I think there's plenty of keto plans that like include some more plants, healthier fat profiles, like from monounsaturated fats, fish fats. Like I can kind of get behind that. But I think that for the most part, these diets, first of all, people can't follow them for long enough to make a real impact negatively on their health anyway. The problem with the diets is that they just get discouraged again, right? Because it's one more logged failure. And then now like I just emotionally am bummed out. And so what do I do next? Right? So that's why we try at McDaniel Nutrition not to take a depriving approach with any of the plans that my clients follow.
And then on the treatment side of that, from the counseling standpoint, we'd be looking at trying to help someone create that thought pattern, either, that cognitive behavioral type approach to where they're able to then, have that positive self-talk or put up the stopper, right? When they're wanting to lead down towards that Twinkie or Ding Dong or Hostess cupcake. Well, I'm just letting all my secrets out right now. But the reality, if you know me, those aren't secrets. But the reality is like, what's the stopper? How can I stop that? And sometimes it's a visualization of a stop sign even, or it's remembering how you feel when you do say no and that amount of success that's inside there. And then also, the ability to I think get the data as well too. So like, journaling, logs and things of that nature. Now does that help? So, you know, for us, from a clinician standpoint, it would help us see like, okay, this time of day, you know, you're having this type of craving, or you're having these negative self-talk thoughts as well. But from your standpoint, being able to see data as well, if someone's keeping track of this time of day is when I'm really craving sugar.
Sure.
Is that stuff you would use as well too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, well, what we know from people who keep food journals, for instance, is that they're about 2 times more successful in weight loss than people who don't. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody should keep a food journal because it's not healthy for everyone to do. I'm thinking, you know, someone who might have a history of eating disorder or disordered eating. But it just brings an awareness to our patterns. A lot of times eating is mindless. You know, we just grab a handful of M&Ms off the secretary's desk and we don't even think about it. Or we don't pay attention to how full we are. We just eat and then we're done. And then, you know, 20 minutes later, we're like, oh, I feel terrible. I ate too much. So a lot of it is, you know, but by journaling, we get in tune with our patterns. We can see what we eat. You know, I always tend to have that craving at 3 p.m. Maybe I also teach my clients how to pay attention and use like a hunger scale. So thinking about how hungry I am before I start eating and then how full I am when I'm done. And based upon their goals, kind of assigning a number to that. So, you know, if someone's trying to lose weight, the goal is just to feel comfortable and energized when they're done eating, like nowhere near full, right? So if they can learn how to do that, then it kind of opens up the world to being able to maybe have a little bit more variety in what they choose to eat because they know when to stop. Now, we all know that that's not super easy for everyone to do, but I think intuitive eating or really paying attention to those cues, those internal cues, both physically and emotionally, can really help people maybe improve their relationship with food, which is a lot of times the big issue.
Yeah, and that's that stress world that we live in, right? And the relationship to food as well. And I think people don't realize that you're a stress eater, you know, until you actually slow down. And I'm a big proponent of know thyself, you know, and that emotional intelligent concept of getting to know yourself on very deep levels. And I think food and that relationship, and it stems from how we were raised. It goes all the way back, right? To birth, really. And I think a lot of times, until you take a step back, and maybe it is through journaling and putting your thoughts together, you don't realize when you're eating. You don't even realize it.
Right. Yeah, I think it's kind of teaching your clients to understand, is it about my stomach? Like, am I hungry? Is it my head? Or is it my heart? You know, emotional eating. And like getting them to understand, like if I throw out the word, you know, hamburger, you know, or what comes to mind for you?
Me, grilling out,
Yeah.
big old hamburger, and then I'm going to put some barbecues. Okay, never mind. Go ahead. Yeah. Woo. Yeah.
Or I might ask you, like, what are the reasons why do we eat?
Celebrations.
Okay, celebrations.
Yeah.
So that would be like heart, okay.
Yeah. Because I'm hungry.
Hungry, that would be stomach.
Yeah. What else do I eat? Because I want to.
Yeah, that might be head.
Yeah.
Right, so when you have clients do this and they list all the reasons why, you feel like a big old chart of all the reasons why someone might eat, the majority of them come down to emotions, not stomach. So it's really trying to get them to understand, why am I eating? You know, am I really hungry and it's time to eat, or am I eating because the clock is telling me to?
That's true.
Or,
that's huge.
Yeah, just because I always eat at this time. So it's just, it's digging down a little bit more, and I think that's important.
And I think so many of us are raised too, like to clean your plate, you know, and there's probably differences in generations, you know, now, but the reality is, like, you're supposed to clear your plate. Eat everything on your plate that was heaped on there as well,
by somebody else.
Yeah, by somebody.
Somebody else knows my stomach, clearly, because they told me what I should be eating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of that as a mom. Like, I usually fill my kids' plates, and what I should be doing, it's just a mess usually when I let them do this, but eating family style and allowing the kids to put the food on their plate because they know their stomach's best. And so that's my job as a mom, is to help them learn how to be intuitive eaters. And then when they're done, not saying, well, you just have a couple more bites, that, well, they would have if they were still hungry for it. right? So it's like,
That's so true. I'm looking at myself. I'm judging myself right now because I'm like, oh yeah, just last night I put a big, and then I said, you need to eat that. That's some protein, and you're going to need some protein. That's so true. So true.
Yeah.
Now cravings. We're talking just a little bit about that. What are some tips to handle cravings? It's like one, realizing you have that, and I've seen like brain scans of people that are craving sugar at the same time as someone who's on cocaine.
Right,
And
right.
they're-
It's
they,
real,
you see
yeah.
all that, and I firmly believe like it's hard when you're craving, for me anyway, when I'm craving sugar is to give up, and to go have a big old glass of water. That's hard. But I mean, what are some tips for people out there that struggle with that?
Yeah, I think what we just talked about, like the journaling piece is big, right? So just before you, like noticing, the first step, one of my favorite researchers, Judson Brewer, is like big in mindful eating. And so he talks about getting curious about the craving. So it's like mindfulness. It's not judging the craving, like, oh, there it is again. I'm such a weak person. I've got this craving again. It's just noticing. Okay, wow, I'm really noticing that I've got a craving for this. Like sit with it. What does it feel like in my body to feel that craving? And just give it a second. A lot of times it's just automatic, right? We would have a craving, we head straight to the closet to get whatever we want. So it's first of all trying to just pause and have some sort of notification around it. And then being intentional. Do I really want to enjoy that? And if you do, eat it, put it on a plate, don't eat out of the package, sit down, really taste it, really enjoy it. And then, so sometimes it might be actually to indulge in it. The other option that you might go down is if you're not truly hungry, then you find yourself a way to distract yourself. Maybe you go for like a 5-minute walk, or you just go do something else in the house until you feel like that craving subsides, because sometimes it does. The other option might be to find something healthy. That's a better option. So if you're craving something sweet, maybe fruit, it's not the same as Oreos, but maybe just by eating that and enjoying it, maybe that will help. So kind of trying to find a substitute. But I think that in the end, we're not going to change that behavior until we learn more about it. And part of it is, like you said, journaling. When you tend to have more cravings, understanding what it feels like in your body, and then maybe it will go, maybe it will leave. But I think it's about getting curious first, kind of learning.
And sometimes the replacement stuff works, sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on you, right? It comes
Right.
back to a lot of that.
Right. And some people, I've had some clients who really do crave sugar a lot, and when they've given it up for a certain amount of time, those cravings tend to subside. They don't tend to be as strong. So we talked a little bit about kind of the mind gut reaction, but your microbiome, the bacteria, the trillions of bacteria that we have in our guts, they are slightly responsible for some of the cravings that we have. So if we can optimize our gut health by eating lots of healthy plant-based fibers and eating fermented foods, we create a healthier bacterial environment, and sometimes that actually can help us maybe reduce cravings later down the road. So it's chicken or the egg kind of thing, but I think that when we sit with a healthy diet, we can change our brain. Just like you're talking about those brain scans, you can change. We've seen it in research, like people, when they eat healthfully for a long period of time, they get just as happy in their brains when they see healthy food as when they saw junk food previously. So we can retrain our brain, and we can retrain our taste buds. Which just takes consistency. Yeah.
And that's the beautiful point you just stressed there, is that connection with the mind and the body and the gut. And at times, the way we eat affects our mood, right? And so living a different lifestyle of eating, didn't say it again, but living that lifestyle can affect our overall mood, and making sure we get the right nutrients as well too, because we also know, from the mental health field, that certain deficiencies in certain areas result in symptoms that look like symptom of a mental illness. And we know when we have certain deficiencies, then that nutrients that affects our brain chemistry as well too. And so that's just the other component of why it's great to eat in a healthy way.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You mentioned earlier prevention. What does that mean from your standpoint? Because that means a lot of different things, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess I go straight, thinking about my dad and thinking about how I had this history, strong history and genetic predisposition to heart disease. So I see a lot of clients that come in and they say, my parents have this, they have that. I look just like my parent, and they don't want to go down that same road. And I remind them that genetics are about 20%. Like we get to control 70 to 80%.
Wow.
With our dietary and lifestyle choices. And so that's powerful. We have a lot of control of our destiny. And I know that takes, maybe a lot of mental work to also get around. Like there's some clients that just have a hard time separating themselves from seeing themselves not going down the same path maybe as their parents did. But so prevention is really optimizing what we eat, what goes on the end of that fork 6 or 7 or 3 times a day, however many times you eat, to just optimize our health so we don't get any of these diseases, and also just the day-to-day life stuff, like that I'm optimizing my energy and that I'm able to sleep better because I'm not eating too close to bed. So it's really about, I think, preventing these chronic diseases that are associated with poor diet and lack of exercise.
And of course, the earlier you start in life, the better, correct?
Yeah, but it's never too late.
But it's never too late.
Never too late.
Never too late.
It's like kind of like the smoking thing, right? Like I don't know what they say. Like, stop smoking like 7 years. Or I don't know that statistic.
Yeah, I've heard
that
too.
It's good. It's never too late.
Yeah,
basically.
either way, just stop it. Yeah, stop it. Now the corporate side of your business as well too. You enjoy going out and doing some of that work. So what does that look like?
It looks different at different companies. One of my clients, the Republic of Tea, you probably see their teas in Panera Bread Company. They have a plant in Nashville, Illinois. So I drive out there once a month and then they're on site all day. So I do presentations to their whole group, which is like a staff employees of 100 employees. And so we do everything from like cooking together as a team to maybe me presenting on various nutrition related topics. And then I work one-on-one with their clients as well. And then we have a wellness committee. So we meet as a wellness committee and we think about what we want to do for the year. So it's great. I mean, it's always wonderful to see companies who are so proactive and creating a culture of health for their employees, because we're at work a lot, right? So where we work really is a determinant of our health.
Yeah.
So, and then probably, a very common other thing that I might do in corporate wellness is just, going in and doing a lunch and learn presentation on various topics. So I might go in, like May is National Salad Month, so I might go in and talk about how to build a healthier salad that actually keeps you feeling full. And so we all might work with food. I think anytime we can get people to actually work with food, it's always more enjoyable. But yeah, and then I have a weight management program that I've put into place in some of the businesses where I go in weekly and we do body composition measurements where we measure body fat and muscle mass. And it's just really empowering for people to know their personal numbers and to know their personal maybe risks for things, and then to see those things move in the right direction and to be able to do that while they're at work. Yeah. That's such a benefit that I think companies can really give their employees, and it pays the company back too to have healthier, more productive employees as well.
Yeah, you look at insurance premiums that companies have to pay, and then you look at people having to take time off of work or people not fulfilling their work duties because they're sluggish. All those things are just huge benefits for companies to take advantage of.
Yeah, and I think just an employee who wants to come to work, one of the simplest things that businesses can do is to offer healthy snacks on hand. Like it sounds like that would be very simple and that a lot of businesses would do that, but a lot of businesses don't. They just have a vending machine that's filled with not healthy choices. And so what we've seen is that employees who are offered healthy snacks report just loving being at work more. The other thing is like taking walk breaks. We've seen that when companies allow employees to take regular walk breaks while they're at work, they're more productive, they have better energy levels, they're just happier, healthier employees. And it's, if they take 3 5-minute walks, that's just 15 minutes out of the day for who knows how much of an increase in productivity.
Yeah. And I think the more companies get out of that old mindset of, okay, you're here 9 to 5, you get 15 minutes in the morning, you get 15 minutes in the afternoon, you get 30-minute lunch. And we have a generation now too, the millennials, right, always get a bad rap about a lot of different things. But, for us at our agency, those millennials are like making us so much better, and they bring just different perspectives.
Totally.
And you see that willingness to work in different areas, the concept of a standing desk. Like,
Oh.
look how long that took
I know.
for it to like take off.
I
You
just
know what
got
mean?
mine yesterday.
Well,
I'm
there you go.
already very happy that,
Yeah,
Yeah, my
yeah.
husband works for a great company. They have yoga on Thursdays. They have
Really?
someone that comes and does boot camp. They have breaks for tea. I mean, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And like, he just adores working there for that
Exactly.
reason, because he just feels really taken care of from his health. So it's
Yeah.
meaningful. Employee wellness is really meaningful. And I don't know if, companies just don't recognize that registered dietitians can do some of that, or maybe, but I think that we really can do a lot by coming into a company and changing the culture and helping. But it works better with like a committee. It always works better when you've got employees who can input their opinions about what should be done and what they like and what they don't like. So I think it always works better when I can come in and not me kind of say what I think should happen, but to hear what does the company feel, what are the risks for the company. A company that I'm working with next month, they found that blood pressure was the biggest issue. So we're tackling blood pressure, everything blood pressure. They're getting blood pressure cuffs so they can easily take their blood pressures. The topics that I'm going to be discussing are all about ways that we can improve blood pressure through dietary measurements. So it's great to kind of also know just the company as a whole and their risk that they tend to have, and then how can we best tackle that from all standpoints.
So any of you executives that are out there listening to this right now, you've heard some really great benefits, and and it does have to start at the top. You got to get leadership on board with it and to be open and supportive of it. Because as Jen was just pointing out here, employees are more than happy to work in an environment that takes care of them, where they feel valued.
Yeah, sure. I think you're so right about the top down. I mean, when I think about the companies that I work with, it's the presidents that are like, they're out running a marathon and, and wanting healthy food. So it does trickle down that way.
Awesome. Well, we have been talking with Jenn McDaniel of McDaniel Nutrition during this episode of Mental Health Matters. Jenn, so as we're wrapping up here, right? So what would be, a couple inspiring things that you could say to if someone's wanting to, come and explore talking with you guys? What, because sometimes it's about that first step, right? Like, and same thing with counseling as well too. Like, what's that first step, and then to get in there and do that. So what would you say to get someone to, come on in, let's just do this?
Sure. So I would invite them to just play around on our website, McDanielNutrition.com. We have lots of blogs, we have recipes, you can see TV and media appearances, so you can just get a feel of what it's like to work with us. Because, not every dietitian is the right match for the right person. So there's plenty of dietitians out in St. Louis who work privately. We're not the only group, but we do want people, if they're trying to improve their health, to work with a dietitian. That's the expert that we believe is the right person. But yeah, I would say go on McDanielNutrition.com, just review some of our blogs. You can really get a feeling of kind of our approach, our philosophy. We're moms, we're parents. We try to offer realistic, approach to living a healthier life, practical, doable. We really believe in all those things because it's what we expect of ourselves. And then if that's the case, then they can just contact us through the website, and I can hop on the phone with them and chat first. I'm happy to do that and go back and forth over email. And then once, they feel like it's the right fit, we can get started.
Awesome. That sounds great. And if anybody's interested in looking at that cookbook and buying it.
Yep,
how would they do that?
Amazon, right? So
Okay.
it's the Prevention Mediterranean Table Cookbook, and you can find that on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jenn, for joining us today. Thank you for all of you guys out there listening. Just realize that, mental health plays a component in everything. And to always be thinking of, we have our overall health, and then we have these different parts of that. You have your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health, and to start to realizing that and to continue to break down stigma in that aspect. Also, we'll continue to have podcasts on a weekly basis, especially during Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May. So this will be our first podcast of Mental Health Awareness Month, and we look forward to talking to you guys next time. Until then, this is Tom Duff, Mental Health Matters. Check us out at stlouiscounseling.org. Thanks.
This has been Mental Health Matters with Tom Duff of St. Louis Counseling Services. Check out stlouiscounseling.org for more information.